So the new Routemaster, the new bus for London. This bus was meant to define a new era of buses for London, being green, efficient, and nostalgic. But did it live up to its expectations? In this video, we're going to discuss performance, design, cost, and more to determine whether the new Routemaster was worth it. So the original Routemaster, an iconic bus that served the streets of London for decades. But in the mid-2000s, it was really starting to show its age, with newer buses having ramps so it was accessible for wheelchair users and Oyster card readers, allowing for faster boarding times as there was no need for cash. The old Routemasters were really not up to modern day London standards, so in 2005, they were removed from the network completely. At that point, we thought the legacy of the Routemaster was over. But in 2008, the then Mayor of London, Boris Johnson, made a bold promise to bring back the spirit of the Routemaster. And to do that, he opened the floor to everybody. That's right, TfL and the Mayor's office launched an open design competition, meaning architects, designers, engineers, and the general public could submit ideas for what the bus of the future could look like. And this wasn't a PR stunt. Over 700 entries poured in, some sleek, some retro, and others, well, a bit out there. With the final design being a collaboration between bus engineering firm Capico and design studio Heatherwick. Once the designs were finalised, they were sent over to British bus manufacturer Wrightbus to build these buses, with TfL initially ordering 600 of these. Okay, so that was a bit of context of the Routemaster, but what were the intentions for it? Well, the intentions for this bus were faster boarding and alighting times. This was to be achieved by the addition of the third door. The next is greener air for London, and this would be achieved by including hybrid technology in the buses. And lastly, is meant to evoke a sense of nostalgia, and this would be achieved by the hop on and hop off feature at the back door. And when it entered service in 2012, it did just that, with Oyster card readers located throughout the bottom deck, with the bus driver in charge of the front two doors and the conductor in charge of operating the final back door. Even though conductors didn't sell tickets like they did with older Routemasters, they still played a similar role, supervising the boarding and alighting of passengers on the rear door. They even had a bell to press to alert the driver that it was ready and safe to depart, all whilst using newly optimized hybrid engines that were 15% more efficient than other hybrid buses on the road, showcasing its curvaceous design and three doors, making it look modern, fresh, and premium. And this method of operation worked for a bit, but it wasn't long until the faults of this bus started appearing. As previously mentioned, unlike older Routemasters that required a conductor there to sell tickets, the conductor on the new Routemasters were only there for safety reasons whilst helping passengers alight and board the bus, specifically when that back door was open. However, conductors were not allocated on all Routemasters, meaning other routes that were allocated the Routemaster had their back door closed permanently while the bus was moving, significantly reducing the original purpose of these buses. And yeah, that's annoying, but at least we still have conductors on those 6 routes, right? Right? Well, they were phased out from 2016, meaning all Routemasters had their back door closed permanently whilst the bus was moving. Fare evasion. The removal of conductors on all routes links to another issue with these buses, fare evasion. The conductor's presence, to some degree, worked in deterring fare evaders, but once they were phased out, that's when fare evaders started phasing in. This eventually caused the removal of the various card readers on the bus, switching to a single card reader at the front next to the bus driver. Faulty hybrid technology. Let's recap. So the conductors were removed, meaning one can't simply hop on and hop off anymore. The Oyster card readers throughout the bottom deck were removed, meaning slower boarding times. That's 2 of the main intentions of this bus. At least the hybrid engines worked fine and resulted in cleaner air for London. Right? Well, some electric motors on these buses failed, meaning they had to run in diesel only mode, producing more carbon emissions than other diesel buses at the time. However, this did get fixed with new electric motors added. Well, that's it? That's the only issues? That's not too bad then. The buses seem to be doing quite well other than that. Well, there are a few more things. Annoying door. The first batch of Routemasters had an initial design flaw, which included an internal folding back door, which had an excruciating delay, with it sometimes being quicker to exit through the middle door and then walk instead of waiting for that back door to open. Poor ventilation. The initial Routemaster design did not include windows. This may have been okay if the bus had a full air conditioning system, but it didn't, only including an air cooling system. To be fair, the air cooling system uses less energy and takes up less space than an air conditioning system, but it's less effective. This became apparent when customers started complaining about feeling stuffy on the buses in the summer months. However, this issue was somewhat rectified by retrofitting buses with windows, albeit small windows. Cost. Lastly, there was an issue with this bus regarding costs. We've already spoken about the initial extra cost incurred by having conductors. Then there was a loss in revenue by having Oyster card readers located throughout the bottom deck, but another big cost was the vehicles themselves. In London, usually, bus companies take on the responsibility of ordering new buses, which means they get to design the interior as they please, whilst adhering to TfL guidelines. However, the buses costing £354,000 each meant it deterred bus operators from buying it. I mean, rightly so, it would have deterred me as well. £354,000. Just for a bit of context, this was nearly double the cost of a regular bus at the time. Double. Sit with that. Double. So TfL essentially took on the cost and then rented the buses out to operators, which is why they all have the same maquette, because they're owned by TfL. But look, I said a lot of negative things about this bus so far, but it isn't all bad. It isn't all bad. I quite like the interior. It looks very nice, looks very clean, and the colour scheme is really unique and cool. In addition, the back staircase, the way it curves and loops up, is very, very cool. It is a bit hard to walk up or down whilst the bus is moving, but it's fine, just teleport and it'll be all good. The noise of the motor is also really nice. It's very like low and nice and like calming and like kind of rumbles along. It's a really nice sound. Another thing is the front window panels on the top deck. Due to the glass not being that big, it kind of shelters you from getting direct sunlight into your eyes, whereas some buses have a bigger window panel, which means the sunlight in the sun in summer really gets in your eyes. Another thing, whether people view it as good or bad, it has worked in continuing the legacy of the Routemasters. This bus also inspired other buses, such as the SRM, the Enviro 400H City, and the Enviro 400 EVs, some being more successful than others. So what does the future hold for these buses? Well, they're currently going through a midlife refresh, with new seats and maquettes added. However, due to these buses being hybrid, and TfL aiming for an 100% zero-emission bus fleet by some time in the 2030s, these buses will probably run to the end of their life expectancy and then be scrapped. Aims to prolong these buses have been attempted. This was done by retrofitting an existing hybrid Routemaster with a fully electric motor. However, only one bus was retrofitted, and we haven't seen that on the road for quite some time. So, was the Routemaster worth it? Look, I love the Routemaster, and I like how some of the features from the original Routemaster have been kept. I love the curvaceousness, colour scheme, and the nod to nostalgia. Regardless of some of the not great design features, such as the inward folding back door, windows that are too small that I would barely call them windows, and aircon that is subpar at best. These buses are a great successor to the original Routemaster, being another iconic bus on the streets of London. What do you think of the new Routemaster? Do you think it was a worthwhile investment, or do you think it should have never been built? Also want to say thank you for the channel members and patrons. I really appreciate your support. If you want to join, links in the description. I really appreciate you guys, for real. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. And when it entered service in 2012, it did just that. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17 18 19 20 21 22 23 24 25 26 27 28 29 30 31 32 33 34 35 36 37 38 39 40 41 42 43 44 45 46 47 48 49 50 51 52 53 54 55 56 57 58 59 60 61 62 63 64 65 66 67 68 69 70 71 72 73 74 75 76 77 78 79 80 81 82 83 84 85 86 87 88 89 90 91 92 93 94 95 96 97 98 99 100 101 102 103 104 105 106 107 108 109 110 111 112 113 114 115 116 117 118 119 120 121 122 123 124 125 126 127 128 129 130 131 132 133 134 135 136 137 138 139 140 141 142 143 144 145 146 147 148 149 150 151 152 153 154 1 See, like, how do you hold? I can't hold the pole unless I do just that and then that.